Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of Chasing Poker Greatness. As always, this is your host, Coach Brad Wilson, and today is Tuesday, which is a very tactical day. John, how you doing, sir?
Doing well. Learned our lesson from last week. Don't record on Sundays because the Titans are not a good team, and all the hand breakdowns will be salty. If we...
I'm feeling a little saltier after you said that. Just like, It's true, though, and you can't, you know, the data says that the Titans are awful, and I can't dispute that as of yet. Maybe after a larger sample size, I don't know. What prediction could I possibly have?
The regular season record.
The regular season record at this point, like after week 1?
Yeah.
I would say there's 17 games this year. I would say that, 8 and 9.
8 and 9. Oh, that's not
or
too bad.
7 and 10. I would say that's my expectation on the high end. Maybe they win, maybe they go 10 and 7.
Could squeak into a wild card game or something. Maybe still have a shot at the playoffs with a record like that, right?
I mean, what if the Cardinals are just like the nuts this year? Like, what if the Cardinals just are one of the best teams in the NFL? That could be true too.
I mean, like I said last week, I'm pretty sure they're the worst team in their division. So
last year,
no,
clearly
this year, do you think they're going to be better than the Niners, the Rams, or the Seahawks?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's a Titans fan holding on to whatever hope he can find.
I've only seen them play one game, and they played very well. That's all I have to say. Right. Kyler Murray is a freaking animal, and their defensive line is really good. And how did we do this? Where are we at? We're at Tactical Tuesday right now. Yeah. This is a football strategy show.
Anyway,
yes, I'm holding on to any hope that the Titans might be above average.
All right. Well, we got a couple river bluff catching spots queued up for the viewers today. Get started with this one. These are both hands that I played pretty recently at 1KNL. And like I said, I got put in a couple spots on the river. This hand starts with a under the gun open. I 3-bet this from middle position. And under the gun calls.
What hand do you have, John, for the podcast listener?
Red queens, queen of diamonds, queen of hearts.
All right, 2 queens. Also, depth pre-flop. We are exactly 100 big blinds deep, so that's pretty easy.
Nice. So king of diamonds, king of clubs, 5 of spades on the flop. King 5 rainbow. Under the gun checks. I am c-betting range on this flop for a small size. So I bet $56 into 175. I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about here.
Not really. I mean, just range bet makes a lot of sense to me.
Yep. And I get called. The turn is the 6 of hearts. Under the gun checks again, and I decide to check back. Could maybe have a discussion, I think, here about whether there's any merit to betting the turn with this hand.
How are you structuring your bluffs? I assume, ace queen would probably be your primary bluff here.
Yeah, I think ace queen would be one of my bluffs for sure. I think queen jack would definitely be another one. I think there's there's 2 ways to go with just the entirety of my range on these sorts of paired boards. One is just to I don't know. Okay. So one very common line that I take on paired boards is the stop and go line, where I just check the turn with close to range and then just bet rivers with both bluffs and value. Maybe for different sizes with my bluffs that I do with my value. I think another option here could just be to um, bet only bluffs. Excuse me, bet only bluffs on the turn and plan on like tripling off and like check back like I don't know some value hands like this one that I don't know. Queens is weird because like I can definitely get called by worse on this turn. It's just like, is it better to get called on the turn by those hands or like maybe get called slightly more often on the river for maybe a larger size?
Well,
yeah, I guess like
I
what
think
I'm saying here is like I don't have a great.
well, I think you're probably just mixing based on something arbitrary. Like you're mixing based on the situation as it develops, I guess. And like this is like it's a tight formation pre-flop, 3-bet pot. You see about the flop. I'm with you there. On the turn, I guess it boils down to like villain doesn't have a ton of value here, right? Like their range is like king queen suited. That's their value, and then they also have jacks, tens, and nines and eights ish, something like that.
Yeah, for their
maybe they have
catchers.
like for their bluff catchers. They have like backdoor ace queen suiteds, something like that. Even though we blocked that pretty hard.
Yeah.
So like ace queen of clubs, ace queen of spades. So I think their range it's pretty well defined, and I guess the decision for me would hinge on how I think villain expects me to play my bluffing strategy. And if villain expects me to just go like bet with, my natural bluffs like ace queen, and then they call down with their bluff catchers, then I think bet outperforms bet check. If you think villain's going to overfold like jacks and tens to a turn bet here, then I would prefer to check back and then play rivers accordingly. But it's really based on population and how they're going to play their turn strategy.
Okay. So if I had to like kind of just answer what I think would be like the most effective, like if my goal here was to fold out jacks, I think I would go bet or bet jam.
We need to talk about that because let's think about how villain's range is set up here, right? Like they're in a bind. Like they're really in a bind if they have jacks because that's close to top of range for them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's close to for sure. Yeah, it's close to top of range. I mean, the actual top of range would be king queen suited, but yeah,
it's close. I mean, maybe they have aces too that they flat with, right? This is another one of those reasons why like flatting pre with aces is sometimes really good because then you can have more value. But on this board, like they have a bunch of bluff catchers, and it's kind of like a game of chicken at this point, right? It's
right.
Are they comfortable folding out their range to multiple bets, or are they just going to call down with their best bluff catchers?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm actually not sure. I think that there are a lot of players that may just call down with jacks specifically just because they don't block ace queen, which is like a hand that's in our bluff range, and we have ace king. And we have aces in our value bet strategy, but they may not think that we have queens in there as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, still, I'm on the ignition. It's going to be tough to know like which type of player we're going up against, and like I don't know.
It has to be data. It has to be data analytics based on the pool. Right. I mean, you're not going to figure this out in real time. This is like stuff that you research before you play your session.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, again, if I just had to guess like what the pool is doing, I would guess that they're likely overfolding jacks on the turn or the river. And so if I was bluffing, I would just bomb 3 streets.
Okay.
So I check back the turn. The river is 8 of clubs. Just for the podcast listener, I guess the board is now king, 5, 6, 8. No flush. No flush on the board. Under the gun, checks again, and I have a decision whether to go for value or not. I think I'm always going to be betting queens on the river here once it turn and river go check. Definitely a question as to sizing. Do you have like a preferred size that you'd go in the spot?
My preferred would be small. I think like bluff catchers, once we check back, bluff catchers are just going to call a small bet. And it also opens the door that they could turn their bluff catchers into bluffs and check raise. They're less likely to do that against a big bet.
Interesting. So trying to induce the check raise and like get called by probably even hands as weak as like ace jack or something some of the time. I thought
Well,
that
I think I think Ace Jack's not a great bluff catcher here. I think their bluff catchers would be like jacks, tens, nines,
oh, so
maybe Ace Queen high.
I was targeting those hands as well, and I thought that those hands would call a bigger bet than like a third or like a block size on the river. I thought like jacks, tens, nines, once turn goes check check, they're just gonna feel like they just have to call, up to 2/3.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. Okay. I mean, again, I think the major problem here is like this formation preflop is so tight that you both of you just have so few combos of hands to work with here that like it's really difficult here. Like we talked about, I think it was in last week's Tactical Tuesday about having like a low number of combos with a high SPR. This is like one of those spots preflop that sets itself up perfectly for that, where you have very few combos here once you like defend pre and then call the flop bet. And so you have like a low availability of bluff catchers, you have a low availability of value, and a low availability of bluffs. And that's just kind of problematic all around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that speaks a lot to you bringing up the point that like it might be reasonable to flat aces as the under the gun player facing the 3-bet, just so that like the top of your range isn't like a bluff catcher that you don't want to put money in with, and like you actually have a stronger top of range than
there's a lot of value in maintaining aces in your pre-flop range in spots like this where I mean, you're struggling, right? If you had aces, it'd be like happy days. You would feel much better than just having like, king, queen suited and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go for the 2/3 on the river, targeting the jacks, tens, nines, part of his range. And
I think I like your 2/3. I think you're right.
Especially when we block ace queen, right? Like that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they call with ace queen, but like if that is like one of their bluff catchers that like might call the third, and the other ones do call the 2/3 when it's very unlikely that they have them, let's just go for the likely portion of their range.
But I think it's actually like it's true on the river, but I think it was true on the turn too. And my intuition tells me that going bet jam is like will outperform bet check bet.
Wow.
With queens. Queens specifically because queens blocks king queen, and that's like a big deal.
Yeah. Well, we'll see that in a second. So I bet the 2/3 and get it ripped in my face by.
Hey, you got the money in. Congratulations. How does it feel?
So I'll be honest. Like I was like before I put the 2/3 in, I remember like being conscious that like okay, this could happen, and like what am I gonna do facing jam on the river?
Yeah, look at that. You're progressing from past Tactical Tuesdays.
I learned how to think like one step ahead. Like, like
this was like
step ahead or something.
Yeah, this was like 10 or 15 Tactical Tuesdays ago. It's coming back to me.
Yeah. And like I don't know, it's just I think especially like in the 1K pool and when you're playing against tougher regs, and this guy is over 81 hands, definitely appears to be a pretty solid reg. He's playing 30, 20, 27, 20. Maybe a little bit on the aggro side. Is that like you just have to be like ready for this stuff to happen. I think like people are gonna have protected ranges, even in their check down lines. People are going to try to take advantage of maybe the fact that they think that you're capped, when you take a certain line. And so one of the things that really hinged on me, or one of the things that my river bet really hinged on was the fact that I have 2 queens and I block at least like one combo of king queen suited. My suits are not like amazing. Like I would rather not have the queen of diamonds and maybe have like the queen of spades, so that I block both king queen of hearts and king queen of spades, and they just can't have any king queen suited combos at that point. But
we don't live in a perfect world,
Yeah. Just like my opinion on the way that like regs structure their preflop ranges at the 1K pool is that like ace king would for sure be a 4-bet in this situation preflop. and then king jack suited and king 10 suited would also be very, very often 4-bet, as very common 4-bet bluffs. So when I block like the strongest value that they have that they would play in this way, maybe other than pocket eights, I think that made me just like way more comfortable going for a bet. And then
well, they only have one combo, king queen of spades, right?
Right.
Yeah,
they only have one combo of king queen of spades,
and with that one combo, they're gonna bet sometimes on the river for
Right.
value themselves. So like, it's not even a full true one combo.
right.
Yeah. So I think like you just have to bet. It's not even a question of
Right.
whether or not to value bet on the river.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, like, queens is sort of like the nut hand in my mind to like go for this size and like go for even a river bet. Like if I had like jacks or tens, even I would be like way.
What about
more...
aces?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like aces, jacks, tens, like in terms of like blocker properties are like not great. Like we really want to be blocking like the king queen suited when we face a check raise, I think. And so like, yeah, with those three hands, I would be like way more tentative about going for a river bet of this size.
Would you have bet the turn with aces? Or would you have been more tempted to bet the turn with aces?
No. I think I would have just likely checked back a lot of my almost all my value on the turn. Yeah.
I just want to make sure maybe there's a listener in the audience or on the watcher on the YouTube channel that like would bet their aces here, and like effectively I think queens is better than aces in this spot,
right?
Because
ace king's getting 4-bet.
Yeah, ace king's getting 4-bet and blocking king queen is like real nice.
Yeah.
You get jammed on, and in villain's defense, I guess they have maybe like 7 combos of value. 6s and 8s.
Oh, 6. I wasn't giving them 6s as a flatting the 3-bet pre-flop under the gun and under the gun +1. I was gonna give them 4 combos with king queen and 8s, king queen suited and 8s.
I think some people have flat 6s, but I mean king queen and 8s, whatever. 4, just call it a half. Just go to 5 combos of value.
Okay.
So then we're like trying to find the bluff combos. Tell me about trying to find the bluff combos on this spot when you get jammed on. It's, by the way, your pot odds looks like you're calling 676 to win. I don't know how much because they just jammed a ton. It's saying 2-1 though.
Yeah, I think like their bluff combos could honestly, I mean, this sort of feels like a spot where like how you say like versus a fish, like don't bother thinking about like their bluff combinations because we just like they're gonna have like such a wide bluffing range. I think like facing this line, the check jam on the river, like I wouldn't be surprised to see anything that flats the 3-bet pre-flop that isn't like a great hand. If I had to like pick like the best bluff combos, what would they be? Maybe like queen jack suited.
Queen jack suited. I think ace queen.
Yeah, ace queen is pretty good. Yeah,
the 3 ace queens that have back doors. So ace queen of diamonds, clubs, and spades. Yeah. They only have 2 of those available. I think you're gonna find some like unnatural bluffs, and it kind of we kind of alluded to it before when we were talking about the combinatorics of the situation and how they don't have just a lot of combos to work with, and so I know the result of this hand, but in review, I was pretty happy about just calling the river, and they had a hand that I think makes a lot of sense for this specific situation. And it's just like, so let's just do the reveal because,
sure.
We can talk about it. You do end up calling because apparently you had thought about what to do before you bet, which is nice.
Who knew that's a good thing to do when you're playing poker?
Yeah, who knew? To be prepared for something. Yeah. Villain has 10s, which, this is one of the one of the worst hands they have here. I think 9s and 10s are probably the worst hands that they show up on the river with to go along with their ace queen suited. So again, you got very few combos to work with. They just chose kind of the worst hands, one of the worst hands they show up here to check raise all in. I assume that the reason why they opted to check raise all in was they thought this bet check bet line would be under bluffed and that their 10s just didn't have enough equity to call the river.
Yeah, for sure. Which makes me I mean, that I should take that info and then like maybe not take this line for value anymore. Like what? Like how should I perceive that info?
I think a key is this villain likely expected your bluffs to bet the turn. Honestly, that's how I would interpret it.
Right.
Like if they feel like tens is not valuable
Yeah.
enough to just call the river, then they have to think that you're betting your like ace queens on the turn. And so when you check back, you've just got more like hands like you have like aces, queens, jacks that are now thin value betting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I should just be going bet with, even slightly thinner value than, ace king and king queen and king jack or whatever. It's really strong hands that I have on this board.
Well, you still somehow managed to get all the money in against tens, so it didn't like.
I got to count on them turning tens into a bluff on the river.
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, I don't really love them doing this, but yeah, it's not unexpected, I guess, for the situation.
How do we bluff these guys then? If like we can't go bet check bet and we can't go bet, like what's the way to like get them to fold?
I mean, what a complicated question to ask, right? As we're about to move into the next segment. I mean, like, yeah, you're bluffing them if they're calling with all their hands, then okay, so this is a problem. They're calling with most of their range because they have very few combos pre-flop, so they feel the need to over defend post-flop, so basically like you're not bluffing them.
We should not bluff. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, because they're over calling. So we should be under bluffing if they're going to overcall.
Yeah.
I think that's the adjustment. If they overfold because they start with very few combos, they start folding like queens and jacks, then we should just bluff like madmen. Right.
Oh my God. Well, good luck getting me to check down queen jack suited or whatever on the turn and river because they don't fold.
I
guess that's what I have to do though. I mean,
if they're not fold, but we can't make an extrapolation based on this one hand and this one villain. Like we need to know like sort of what the population and the pool's doing, and then kind of go from there.
Right.
More than this one hand. But yeah, it's a compelling question, and I'll let the CPG podcast and YouTube listeners and watchers ponder that question during the break. And we're about to move to another hand where John is once again putting on his catcher's mitt and trying to catch a bluff. Stick around after the break.
You survived pre-flop boot camp. You've shot the fish in a barrel. Now, prepare yourself for the feeding frenzy. A comprehensive strategy for gutting every fish in your player pool. Data-driven hero bluffs, light call downs, and perfect value bets that are maximally designed to hurt some feelings. Feeding Frenzy. Available now at chasingpokergreatness.com/feeding frenzy.
All right. Hope you have your catcher's mitt on, locked, loaded, ready to rock, because John, you're going to be trying to catch another bluff here.
I definitely have it on.
Second hand. Do you ever not have it on? Like, do you go anywhere without your catcher's mitt when you're playing poker?
I don't know. I try not to start a session without my catcher's mitt nearby.
Yeah. See, this is why I tweeted a while back that like the best poker players have very little trust or faith in their fellow man, because like you just don't believe anything that they do. Like where's the lie in your story here in the way that you played this hand?
This one, it's gonna be hard to find the lie or in this one, but we'll go through it anyways. Maybe someone can help me understand why I should not have put my catcher's mitt on.
Well, they say the best lies have a lot of truth mixed in there, so maybe that's a good reason.
Yeah, hopefully they do have enough truth mixed in to make this call not terrible. So all right, I open middle position, pocket nines, black nines, nine of spades, nine of clubs. The big blind, don't really know much about him, only have 23 hands on him, but seems reasonable. His 3-bet size is also reasonable. He does 3-bet to $104. And I call with the nines. The flop is 10-10 deuce with 2 hearts, $213 in the pot. The big blind C bets for just under a third. And I don't think I have much choice here but to call.
Yeah, it looks like they got their 30% pot button programmed in, and now they're giving us the 60.
Yep. And another, I don't know, follows up with a big bet on the turn. The turn is the 10 of diamonds, so now the board is 10 deuce 10-10.
I probably ruined you in these spots with our breakdown from the other day, like when I'm just like, oh, trips on the turn.
Yeah.
Cool, I got all the best hands. Let's go.
Oh, God damn it. Now I just have to call down with everything.
I don't know if everybody does that or just me. But if I had ace king, I would just bomb off, and I would also bomb off with like aces kings as well.
That's a good point. Maybe this hand definitely did happen after we went over this hand, and now maybe I'm just like overly paranoid that like everyone does what you do and I'm overfolding. But I mean, whatever. Nines, like, this is not overfolding, or this is not like overcalling. I think nines is just I think I have to call nines on the turn. Maybe not. I don't know.
I think you have to. But I'm not feeling good about it. I mean,
yeah, neither am I.
like, once villain sort of 3 bets from the big blind versus middle position. This is very tight formation, and they've got they don't have a ton of combos, and they're going to have all 24 of the best combos. Yeah. So like, that becomes problematic when a large percentage of their range are all the hands that beat you, and they most likely all play in this way. It's hard to find the bluffs.
It's an interesting spot, actually, where like every single hand that I have that isn't quads is a bluff catcher. I have queens, which is like the best pair that I would have in this spot. That's like, I'm not like jumping for joy putting the rest of my stack in. Same thing with jacks, and nines is obviously worse than those 2 hands.
Another good reason for flatting aces pre-flop.
That's a good point.
Like, we're just gonna keep breaking these hands down. Like, you're never gonna 4-bet aces again after Tactical Tuesday. Like, if you have aces, well, again, that makes your life a little bit easier here, because then you have at least 6 combos of hands that are pretty easy to play.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, now I'm leaning more into the flat aces camp.
But okay, so, and this is like I'm going to throw a wrench in this to poke a hole. Like, with aces specifically, this board paired dynamic is like the lowest frequency board type of them all. It's like a 5%, 5% flop texture type.
Yeah.
And then the tripping on the turn is also very low percentage as well. So like, getting in this exact spot for like a trips board is not going to happen that often. Congratulations, it's like a 5% flop texture followed by whatever this is. Like, there's 2 10s left in the deck, so very low percentage turn as well.
I have a hunch though that if I did start flatting aces in spots where I normally 4-bet them, I would start running into lots of situations where I'm like, thank God I have aces here.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of thought this for a while now, especially in an anonymous pool, that like, just having aces in your range makes this spot so much easier to play, because you're like, oh, cool, like, I can call down with aces. I know that much. So you feel less bad folding jacks or nines at one of these nodes. Because you start folding jacks and nines, and you don't have aces in your range. Well, congratulations. Now you're just folding your whole range except quads pretty much.
Yeah. So I go ahead and call the 2/3 on the turn. $816 in the pot on the river. The river is the 9 of diamonds, so kind of
made
cool.
A boat.
Yeah, woo, yeah. We hit a set. Just for the podcast listener, I guess, both the big blind and I started the hand with 100 big blinds. We have just under $600 left on the river in both of our stacks, and the big blind puts it in.
The big blind puts it in, and then
I put my catcher's mitt on, and
all right, buddy, you're like the little kid with the pillow, like catching 100-mile-an-hour rocket from his dad. Let's go, Dad.
And I got bowled over this time.
And you got destroyed. I don't know. I mean, I think that like theoretically, I don't know. This is such a bad situation.
Like, in Pio lands, like the 9s is just a pure call on the river.
Sure.
If you're gonna fold 9s anywhere, it's like fold a sliver on the turn.
Yeah.
Once you call the turn, you're committed.
Right. Which becomes problematic if villains are not bluffing at the frequency that Pio wants villains to be bluffing with here on the river. Like if they stop bluffing, then it becomes less good to just call down with the 9s.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the way that I've kind of come around thinking about these spots is, like I said before, they've got 24 combos of hands that we know most likely they're doing this with bet, jam, like on an absolute basis. I mean, maybe they check some with their like aces and kings or aces most likely, I think, to check. But
at what point on the turn?
I mean, yeah, maybe the turn. Actually, no, the aces, the flop would be possibly the point to check.
Right. I agree.
But yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I think that like they're probably just betting their overpairs almost on an absolute basis. And so the natural bluffs that they have are, does ace king do this? I don't know. Like, I think I do this with ace king.
Yeah.
But
you would do this with way more than ace king, right? You do this with every single hand that you 3-bet that is not, I mean, you would do this with your whole range actually, right?
Yeah. But I'm over bluffing because I think villains are over folding.
Ironic.
Huh?
That's ironic given that, I just put it in with 9s.
Well, yeah. You folded though when I had the bluff on the trips board.
Yeah, but that was like, that was I had a really bad pair. It's a good question. I mean, like, what's the threshold for calling down in this spot? Like, should I just treat 7s like the same as every other pair?
It depends. I mean, it depends on villain's strategy, right? Like, it depends on how often villain's bluffing, like what their frequencies are. I mean, if they're over bluffing or under bluffing, and I think it's like really easy to under bluff in this spot because they have such a high availability of good hands. Right. On a 10 high board specifically. Like if it's like a queen high board or a king high board, then they have like lesser availability because king high board, they have like ace king and aces, but they don't have queens or jacks.
Yeah. I also think it's very possible that like villains will be under bluffing on this like kind of innocuous looking river where it's like, okay, man, I called your 2/3 on the turn. I probably have a boat or quads. Like, are you really trying to get me to fold a boat or quads on a river that like doesn't really look, is probably not very scary to me? Like,
yeah,
maybe
I think too,
that's
like,
a reason to fold.
I think the turn is kind of, it's worth talking about that villain uses this sizing on the turn.
Yeah,
because I think they do have other options. They could go smaller, like on this trip's turn, to set up a bigger jam on the river. But they choose to like go for 2/3.
Yeah, and like to comfortably get stacks in on the river size.
Yeah, it's like it's a 3 easy installment plan of like, cool, like we're giving you a easy installment here, and then the river, you're gonna have another great price. Congratulations, you're the winner of this promotion.
Minus $1,000 promotion.
Yeah, I mean, just saying, like they could bet 1/3 and then overbet rip rivers, and that's like a more threatening bluff line, I think.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess you tell me, what's your gut instinct? Are they over bluffing here? Or are they under bluffing?
I've been ruined by talking to you. So, okay, my gut instinct is that on the 9, once I call the turn and the river is not like some overcard, like not some Broadway card that would be scary to like a lot of my boats, that they are under bluffing and that I probably should be folding this river. I probably should just be folding this river.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Weird. Like, I'm like happier to bluff catch when the river's like a king. Like,
probably.
Yeah.
Probably an ace is probably like a really good one.
Right. Yeah.
Although, how many like ace X's do we really have? Like, if you have queens here from villain's perspective, I would just jam the river for value. Like,
Yeah.
what ace high you calling down with, buddy?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Like ace high flush draw, and I'm like, yeah, well, hope I make a flush on the river after,
right? Like,
on the turn.
Yeah, so I don't think an ace really effectively changes much. I don't think a king really changes much. A queen, I guess, might change something because maybe we do call down with like ace queen high sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is like one of our call downs.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable bluff catch. I mean, not on the river, but at least on the turn for sure.
Well, we like the difference between nines and ace queen is that ace queen blocks aces and queens. So like, and nines doesn't.
Right.
So I mean, it's good to remove those 6 combos at least.
Yeah, I thought about that like sort of logic too. But then it's like I sort of want them to have those overcards as their bluffs. Like I want them to bluff their ace kings and their king queens and their queen jacks. And like, is it like kind of neutral in that sense that like I'm sort of blocking their value and their bluffs when I have queens and jacks? And
I'm not sure. I would rather block their value than their bluffs. I think it's more important to block their value than their bluffs here.
Yeah. In that case, I mean, like I'll definitely have like ace king offsuit in the spot. Like that'll be one of the hands that I just have a lot of. And like maybe that's like honestly a preferred bluff catcher over nines.
Yeah. It's not a fun spot. Just flat aces pre. Just never raise pre-flop with aces. This is the takeaway from this Tactical Tuesday. Gonna send out a bunch of people that never raise pre-flop with aces.
Yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of angry comments about people who like got their aces cracked by like 6-5 suited and like, yeah, you told me not to 4-bet.
I didn't tell you nothing. This is consume this advice at your own peril. So yeah, I mean, I think the river's a fold, and just looking at the population, I think that like when my snap judgment on this hand was like, I think this one is a fold.
Yeah.
But again, you did make a set.
I
mean, you did make a set and nothing changed. But here's another thing before we close down shop. And this is like a little bit more touchy-feely that, Nick Howard would reprimand me for suggesting. But one thing that I've been really good at in my poker career is imagining how somebody would feel to pull the trigger on bluffs in specific spots. So like, do you think Villain would feel good or bad about jamming on this river specifically in this spot?
With a bluff?
Yeah, with a bluff.
Bad.
So if Villain feels bad, I think they're less likely to bluff just in general.
Yes.
Because, I mean, when everything misses and the board remains static and you've got a bluff, it feels bad putting that last bet in because like, okay, they didn't fold the turn, nothing changed. So I'm really hoping they fold the river here. And people just don't typically fold the river.
Right. As seen in this hand, we should just give the audience the reveal.
And I know that that's a little touchy-feely and like kind of hard to quantify, and we can't like prove the data point beyond a shadow of a doubt that like Villain feels bad in this spot, therefore is less likely to bluff. But I do think it has an impact on bluffing frequencies.
Oh, you think Jax is thin?
What else are they gonna do?
Yeah, a good point. Trap? I don't know.
Trap what? Like your range is all bluff catchers at this point, and like they probably beat most of your bluff catchers. Like you don't have aces, so they beat queens, and maybe you 4-bet kings.
They don't beat queens.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You have like 9s, 8s, 7s here as well. So like they beat everything that you have besides quads and in their mind queens.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably just a fine. I mean, they played it the whole way. Like they knew exactly what they were doing. They set up stacks perfectly to jam the river. So I don't think it's that thin because
that's a good point.
They had a pretty good outline of the situation in their head.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if I just had to like state the logic for myself, it's like with Jacks here, you're getting stacked by all the better hands anyways, even if you check. And if you do check, you're not stacking like the pocket nines, which I would obviously check back. And so it's important to at least stack like the 7s, 8s, 9s. And maybe if I bluff catch with ace king and whatever, get stacked by queens and 10x anyways. So that's a wash, and you want to make sure you get the money in versus the hands that you do beat.
Yeah, let me say it a little more simply than that. When villain's range is comprised of mostly bluff catchers, you don't want to check to induce.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like with your value,
right?
Right. Like you just don't want to check to induce with your value.
Yeah.
All right. This is fun watching you win a stack and lose a stack here and end up even for this Tactical Tuesday. I think this is a really good episode, and anybody that wants to hop into Greatness Village, check out greatnessvillage.com. Hop in the Slack community where me and John live, and the rest of the villagers going on 400 members in there now. It's ramming and jamming. So hop on the CPG newsletter at greatnessvillage.com, get access to the village. I'll see you on the inside. And John, what are the listeners going to do next week?
See us again. Whether you like it or not.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.